Adults were really weird. I drew a python digesting an elephant in its stomach, and I asked them if they were afraid of it. However, they just laughed and said, "Why be afraid of a hat?" To make it easier for adults to visualize my picture, I drew an elephant in the belly of a python. But they told me, "Don't waste time on useless things. Let's focus on studying well." Therefore, at the age of 6, I gave up my dream of becoming an artist, and then became a pilot. But after that, every time I met someone, I still showed them my painting. However, they still said, "It's a hat." From then on, I decided not to show my painting to anyone anymore. Then I started learning about politics and finance that the adults thought were useful. Just like that, I also lived alone, and had no one to talk. Until one day my plane broke down, and crashed in the Sahara. Suddenly, there was a boy appearing, and he said to me, "Please draw me a sheep." I was both surprised and scared. Don't know where this boy came from. However, this boy didn't answer any of my questions. But the boy just repeated, "Can you draw me a sheep?" So I had to follow his request. However, I haven't been drawing since I was 6 years old. Therefore, I gave him the painting of a hat that I used to draw. "No, I don't want a python with an elephant in its stomach," the boy said to me. "The python is very dangerous while the elephant is too big. The place where I live is very small, so I only need a sheep." Hearing that, I was really surprised because he could understand my picture. After that, I immediately drew 3 sheep, but the boy wasn't still satisfied. The boy said the sheep I drew was too thin, and the other was too old. He thought that another sheep didn't look like a sheep, because it had no horns. Really, I had completely lost my patience. I randomly drew a box so that I could fix the plane's engine soon. And I told the boy the sheep was inside. Unexpectedly, the boy happily exclaimed that this was what he wanted. Maybe I had grown up and couldn't see the sheep inside that box anymore. This was like adults never seeing an elephant in a python's belly. "Good morning," I greeted the boy. "Good morning," he replied. I and the little prince were getting closer and closer. I knew that the little prince was from a planet called B612. He loved to watch the sun go down. Because his planet was very small. Just move the chair a bit, and he could see the sunset whenever. He could even see the sunset 40 times in one day. Suddenly, he said to me again, "When people are in a bad mood, they often like to watch the sun go down." However, I still wondered one thing, that the little prince said his planet was full of wild plants. So he hoped that the sheep could help him destroy them. But if a sheep eats weeds, will it eat flowers? After that, I found out that my plane was seriously damaged. And I realized that I was about to face the lack of water. So I was in no mood to discuss this matter with the little prince. And I told him that I was doing something very important. But he said to me, "I fell in love with the only rose on my planet. My rose is on some planet in the sky." He pointed to the sky. "That rose is the shining star of my life. But if the sheep eats that rose, my life also has no meaning. So that's very important to me," he said. "But why do you think it doesn't matter?" After that, the little prince got angry and left. I suddenly realized that I was also completely heartless like other adults. Therefore, I hurriedly found the little prince in the desert. And I wanted to tell him that his rose was very important. However, he had disappeared. I began to remember the thousands of questions the little prince had asked. After that, I drew a picture of him. A voice sounding, "I'm hungry." I was so happy that the little prince was finally back. From now on, I promise I will answer all his questions. As for the question of whether the sheep would eat the flower, I had 2 solutions. The first was to make the sheep a muzzle. The second was to make a fence for the flower. After that, the little prince continued to talk about his planet. On his planet, there were 3 volcanoes up to his knees. He has to clean them every day. One day, suddenly there was a rose growing from the ground. The little prince immediately fell in love with that rose. They had a great time together. The rose also loved the little prince very much. However, she still had a bit of pride and tormented the little prince. Then she thought of ways to make the little prince love only her. "I love her, but I'm not happy," said the little prince. I began to realize that I really didn't understand anything. When the rose knew that he left because of her, she blamed herself very much. And she tried to express her love to the little prince. However, because of her pride, she still refused to hold the little prince to stay. "Whatever, I still have my thorns. If you want to go, then go." The first planet the little prince went to was a planet there was only one king. This king was on the planet alone, but thought he was ruling over everything. But actually, he had no right to rule anything. After that, the little prince went to the next planet. There was a very busy merchant here. He was sitting there and diligently counting the stars. Because those stars would make him rich. And then he could buy more stars. However, he never thought that after getting those stars, it would also have no meaning. The little prince had a rose and he could water it every day. But for this merchant, there was no meaning in getting those stars. In another planet, there was a scientist whose forte was writing bullshit. And he never cares about what the truth was. The little prince already knew he couldn't learn anything in these places. However, adults still pursue money and power, although they don't know what their purpose are. Finally, he came to the earth. But when he just landed, the birds carrying him flew away. How would the little prince return to his planet? Along the way, he didn't meet anyone, only saw craggy mountains. The little prince wanted to greet them. But when the little prince spoke, his words were echoed. Please be my friend. I'm alone. This planet is so strange, only repeating other people's words, he said. At this time, I was facing a big problem. There wasn't a single drop of water here. If I still couldn't fix the plane, I would die in this desert. The little prince offered to fetch water. But I don't know where to find water in this vast desert. If I unfortunately lost my way, it would be even worse. So I thought it was safe to stay in one place and fix the engine. The little prince didn't say anything, just picked up the water bottle, and then walked away. I immediately followed him. The little prince was still steadfastly following his path. However, maybe I forgot that I used to be so steadfast in my own ideas. But now I'm afraid of failure, and just want to stay in my comfort zone. We searched for water from dusk till dawn. Finally, we saw an oasis on the next morning. The little prince taught me a lesson. The star could shine because there was a beautiful flower on it that you couldn't see. The desert was very beautiful because it also hid a cool stream of water somewhere. The little prince never forgot to draw a muzzle for the sheep, because he said he had to be responsible for the rows. However, I firstly needed to understand more about the little prince. For example, the story about this poisonous snake. The little prince met the poison snake after he first came to Earth. The poisonous snake told him that the Earth was a cold and heartless place. And the poisonous snake also had special teeth. Someday, if the little prince missed his planet, it might get him out of here. The little prince remembered this promise and continued walking. Long after that, the little prince came to a garden full of blooming roses. He immediately burst into tears because his rose told him she was the only flower in this universe. However, in this garden, there were thousands of flowers just like her. I thought I had the only flower in the universe, he said. But what I have is just an ordinary rose. At this time, there was a fox discovering that the little prince was lonely. It refused to play with the little prince because it hasn't been tamed yet. To the fox, the little prince was just an ordinary boy like any other child. They weren't really meant for each other. However, if the little prince tamed the fox, they might become good friends. But if the little prince wanted to tame the fox, he had to come here at the same time every day. Then gradually they would become closer and closer. The fox said, for example, if you arrive at 4 o'clock, by 3 o'clock I'm already starting to feel happy. If you come without a particular time order, I don't know when to start feeling happy. After that, the little prince also tamed the fox. However, the time for parting was also coming. The little prince felt sorry for the fox because he could sense that it was also very sad. But the fox said the time spent with the little prince was the best time of his life. Because he didn't eat bread, this wheat field meant nothing to him before. Because the little prince's hair was yellow, this wheat field would remind him of the little prince a lot. Because you spent so much time with me, you make me feel like I'm important too, the fox said. At this time, the little prince realized that humans would develop feelings for the things they tamed. Because he used to water that rose. Because he also used to love and protect her, used to listen to her complain every night. Therefore, as for the little prince, that rose was much more special than other roses. I have to have a responsibility to her. I have to return to take care of her, the little prince said. The fox told the little prince a secret as a gift the fox gave him. The fox said the little prince that he had to use his heart to sense. The things that were really important couldn't be seen with the naked eye. The little prince left. He would have to be responsible for his rose. But who would be responsible for the fox? The fox also seemed to understand. If he took the initiative to give love, he had to know that one day he would have to tear. My plane had finally restarted. I was so excited and wanted to find the little prince to share this joy. But I found that there was no one around. I suddenly remembered something and started frantically looking for the little prince in the desert. I finally found him under a tree. And there was still a poisonous snake next to him. I don't want you to be sad, the little prince told me. You will think I'm dead, but no. I'm just going to another faraway place. And I can't bring this body with me either. I tried to hold on to the little prince's smile. The appearance of the little prince brightened my childhood hopes and dreams again. However, the little prince helped me understand another lesson. That important things should be felt with the heart. After he was gone, I would still hear his laughter. Because I will still smile happily in another star, he told me. But you won't recognize which star it is. Therefore, you will get the feeling that all the stars are smiling at you. I hugged the little prince in my arms and silently felt him slowly leaving. I couldn't keep him at all. The next day, after I woke up, I couldn't see the little prince anymore. There wasn't even a single trace that proved that he was ever been here. Looking at the horizon line in the distance, I suddenly thought that maybe all of this was just a dream. Maybe things never happen, and he never comes either. Until one evening, the laughter of the little prince resounded in a corner of the sky. At this point, I just dared to believe that he had been here. Since then I was no longer alone. That star in the sky was smiling at me. Children after watching this movie were extremely excited. However, when adults watched it, they cried a lot. Because we were all once like the little prince. However, there's no way to be a little prince anymore. The movie comes here. See you on the next movies.